Hello my spider friends, we're here to do another Spooktober film review, but I'm just realising now that there's a lot of space here, so let's try turning down the camera a little bit, like in a downward. That's better. Um, so yeah, I've got a new haircut. Never had a fringe before. Do you think it suits me? I'm undecided. Hair grows, but I think it's nice, it's like a nice mix of change. But let's talk about what we're here to talk about, which is horror movies. See, I've been pretty poorly. I'm still pretty poorly. You can hear in my voice over the last few days, and whenever I'm ill, particularly in excuse me, I must take a drink. Particularly in October time, I like to watch a lot of horror movies. I watch a lot of horror movies. It's pretty much all year round. They don't really reserve it for Halloween, but like October in particular, I really like. I'm just like, just give me all of the spooky movies. And if you are like me and you watch a lot of movies and you like horror movies, you will know that there's a lot of rubbish out there. And sometimes it takes you like 20-30 minutes to realise that the movie you're watching is a complete piece of trash and it's not worth watching all the way through, and that can be really frustrating. So I'm gonna do some like recommendations and anti-recommendations of some movies that I've watched over the past like few days, just so that I can share the knowledge and hopefully spare you sitting through a really bad movie. Now, the first movie that I want to talk about is one that you might not be able to see yet. It's only recently out of the cinema and it's only available pre-order right now. But I wanted to talk about it. It's Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and this is the movie tie-in book, the Haunted Notebook of Sarah Bellows. Now, if I take the wrapper off very carefully, because it's brand new, paid a pretty decent penny for it. I think it was about like £16 on Amazon. This, right, is so cool. It looks exactly like the Notebook in the movie. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is like a campfire book. The idea is that you repeat the stories to your friends and it's supposed to scare them. Like, they're just little short stories. And then they turned that into the movie. Now this, the Notebook, is like the notebook that appears in the movie, with extra stuff in it. It's got the stories in it, which is really cool, the ones that appear in the movie. And then it's got all this other cool stuff in it. It's got all like background stuff, the stuff on Sarah Bellows, like her, this is like her psychiatric evaluation that you see in the movie. And then it's got some really cool artwork, including this. This is like the scariest thing that's in the movie. It's quite disturbing and terrifying. But yeah, it's got some amazing artwork in it. So if you saw the movie and you liked it, I highly recommend getting this book because it's really cool and it ties in with the movie, and I highly recommend, if you haven't seen the movie, to check that out when you can get it on iTunes or DVD or Netflix. Whenever you see it, just get hold of it and watch it. It's very much worth watching. I particularly enjoyed it, so I'm just gonna carefully put the wrapper back on because I like to take care of my books, and we're just gonna pop that to one side. Okay, so because it's like Halloweeny time, iTunes always do sales. I've started buying more movies on iTunes these days, because I've already got like a gigantic DVD collection, but that means like getting up and changing the disc, and oh, who can be bothered? So like I like to go through the iTunes sales and pick movies up when they're only like for sale for a couple of pounds. And October time, if you go into the horror genre, you'll always find a load of movies for under a fiver, and I'll like be like, bye, 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 and that'll be like a really cool evening's entertainment for me. So, Cabin Fever is what I want to talk about. Cabin Fever and the remake Cabin Fever. Cabin Fever is a movie really that should not have been remade because it was made in this century. So it's not that old. And I don't know why they remade it. But like, if you're going to watch Cabin Fever, a Cabin Fever movie, watch the original. And I shall tell you for why. The original was made by Eli Roth. It's got Ryder Strong out of Boy Meets World in it. And it's very, very, very gory. But it's also funny. I don't know if it was supposed to be funny, but I think it was supposed to be funny. But yeah, it's funny, and that's what makes it an enjoyable movie to watch. The remake of Cabin Fever is not funny at all. It's very straight-laced, it's very serious, and it's very boring because it is a remake pretty much scene for scene of the original movie, but without any of the humour. So it loses a lot in that. Like, like there's a guy in the first one who my friend hated me when I watched this with her for the first time because I was like, oh my god, Santa's in the film, and she doesn't like it when I riff movies. When we're watching them, she's like, shush, watch the film, just shut up making jokes and behave yourself. And I couldn't stop making jokes about this guy looking like Santa, so she banned me from watching the movie with her. But luckily I have other friends who enjoy riffing, so, you know, screw her. But yeah, the remake is like, it's joyless, and I have no idea why people decided they were going to take a sort of black, humoured horror film and then remake it without any of the humour. The humour is really what the sequels are really funny. Like Cabin Fever 2, Spring Fever, and Cabin Fever 3, Patient Zero, are really funny. Like, they're gory and they're horror-y and everything, but they're also really funny and entertaining to watch. And there's a reason why the original Cabin Fever had sequels and the remake doesn't, because it's just not very good. So if you're scrolling through on horror on iTunes or wherever, I don't know if Google Play regularly do sales, because I only go to Google Play if like something's really expensive on iTunes, and I'm like, I wonder if it's cheaper. But yeah, I picked up the Cabin Fever movies for a couple of the Cabin Fever movies for a couple of quid, and I would remake. I would recommend that you see the original and skip the remake. And if a particular person is watching who knows who they are, write it down on the list: Cabin Fever brackets original. And then while you're at it, also write down Short Circuit 1 and 2 because you haven't seen them, and that is criminal. Okay, so the movie that I watched next was, again, a movie I picked up on iTunes. It was very cheap. I think it was either $1 or $2.99. And it was called The Terror of Hallows Eve. Now, this was attempting to be a sort of 80s throwback, somewhat like The Terrifier, only it was done very poorly, and in fact it was more of a 90s throwback than an 80s throwback. It was painful to sit through because it was boring, which is one of the biggest sins you can commit in a horror movie. Like, earlier on, me and my friends were watching some crap horror movies on Netflix, and we were having fun riffing them. And like, if you can have fun watching a movie, it doesn't matter if it's bad. I didn't have fun watching The Terror of Hallows Eve. It's about a boy who gets bullied by the most stereotypical high school jocks from a 90s movie that you've seen, except it was made like last year or the year before. And it's got Eric Roberts in it for like 30 seconds. Eric Roberts, brother of Julia Roberts, guy what played the Master in the Doctor Who movie with Paul McGann. Eric Roberts, father of Emma Roberts, like American Horror Story, Emma Roberts, niece of Julia Roberts. He's in it for like one scene, and I'm like, why is Eric Roberts in this movie for one scene? Why would you pay Eric Roberts money to be in a movie in one scene where he's not even significant to the plot? He's like an angry neighbour, and he's like, oh, I don't like this young man doing things. And the girl who plays like the kid's mum is a girl, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but she was in a lot of teen movies like in the 90s, so it's kind of weird seeing her be a mum in a 90s throwback movie. Also, Juliet Landau was in it, who played, like, Juliet Landau from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, who played Drusilla, whose father was Martin Landau, like, horror icon, who also played Bela Lugosi in Tim Burton's Ed Wood. Yes, I am a movie buff. This is why people call me instead of Googling things. 30 seconds. Apparently she was a producer on the movie, but still, this is Juliet Landau. Juliet Landau. She Drusilla in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. 90s icon. And she's in the movie for like 30 seconds. That is criminal. It is absolutely criminal. Like, the only reason I bought this movie is because when I looked on the cast list, it said Doug Jones. Doug Jones is legendary. Like, if you know who Doug Jones is, like, we are brethren. Because Doug Jones is one awesome, awesome dude. He is like, he's what's known as like a movement specialist, because his, like, a large portion of his career has not been based on him speaking lines. It's been based on his movement, because he's got this ability to make this a sort of ethereal movement. Doug Jones was the lead gentleman in that episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Hush. Like, the whole, like, gentleman, scary as anything. That was Doug Jones. Doug Jones was the scary eye monster thing in Pan's Labyrinth. Doug Jones was Abe Sapien in the Hellboy movies. Doug Jones was like the lead zombie in Quarantine, which was the remake of Wreck. Doug Jones is like in Star Trek, the new crap Star Trek Discovery. He was Saru in that. Like, Doug Jones was Billy in Hocus Pocus. The greatest Halloween movie, I think we can all agree, there is no dispute, the greatest Halloween movie of all time is Hocus Pocus. We all know this. There is no disputing this. Doug Jones was Billy the Zombie. Like, how more iconic can you get? He's in the movie, and the character he's playing is terrible. It's a terrible character, and it's a boring movie. And it just drags on. The movie's still going 20 minutes after the movie should have finished. Like, it's like, oh no, we're going to update you on this thing that happens many years in the... We don't care. We don't care. We don't care about the kid, because he's a kid that's like the typical 90s. I've been bullied by some jocks and now I'm going to get revenge. We've seen this 18 billion times, and mostly it was in the 90s. Instead of, like, you know, now it's like we're doing an 80s throwback movie. You missed the 80s. You missed it. You landed too soon. You were doing the 90s. Do not you realise these things, stupid people? So, if you happen to come across this movie, The Terror of Hallows Eve, skip it. Skip it. It's terrible. It's a bad, bad movie. Like, not because all the effects are crap, because it's boring, which is far more criminal than having crap effects. I've watched movies with crap effects and had a marvellous time. Swamp Shark instantly comes to mind. Like, as a movie with not great effects, but I had a marvellous time watching it. Like, you know, like having like bad effects is not a like an instant no deal killer in my humble opinion, but being boring certainly is, and it was. And I was like, thank you, next. Going to have a drink to keep my throat lubricated because I got quite ranty there and I'm still poorly. Yes, this is a Jeffree Star straw. I'm having a Jeffree moment right now. Also, I'm sorry I keep shaking my head. Like, I literally have never had a fringe in my entire life. So it's it's like a touch too long. It's like a little bit in my eyes. So I keep sort of doing that to try and get it out of my eyes, but still be fringy. So what I might do is like do the exact opposite that Brad Mondo says and maybe take some scissors to it. Maybe, we'll see. I kind of like it though. I think it looks cool. Next movie, here's one to see. Now I came across this on Netflix. It was definitely on UK Netflix, so I assume it'll be on US Netflix and other Netflix as well. But it was called Hellfest. And who it's got in it is Bex Taylor Flimner, who was Sin in Arrow, and she was Audrey in the Scream TV series. She is so cool, and I apologise for saying she because Bex is identified as non-binary, so actually that's a they/them pronoun, and I do apologise. Not meant to offend at all. Yeah, so Bex is so cool. I will never be as cool as Bex is. Bex has got like this like short hair with the mohawk thing and the cool earrings, and she's like all punky, and just I've never been as cool in my entire life as she is. Sorry, as they are, like just in general every day. So yeah, love that actor. Anyway, Hellfest. It's about a group of people going. It's like a teen slasher movie. It's a group of people going around like a horror maze, and there's a killer, and he's doing the hacking and the slashing and the killing things and stabbing them with blood and death. And it was so much fun. It was just like it. These are my favourite kind of horror movies, like a teen slasher movie. It doesn't necessarily have to be teenagers, but that's generally how they classify that particular genre. You know, you've got a group of people and they're being stalked by a killer. Those are my favourites. I don't know why. Those just happen to be my favourites. Like, I'm not a huge fan these days of, like, supernaturally ones, because I think that they're just a bit rubbish these days. Like, older ones are sort of fine, but I don't know, like, I've not seen a good one in a while. But yeah, Hellfest. It's got Tony Todd in it. If there is, like... okay, right. So if there's a sign of quality in a movie versus a sign of this will probably be rubbish in a movie, it's sort of who the big guest star is, who they've paid to be in the movie. And if it's probably going to be a bit rubbish, it'll almost certainly have Malcolm McDowell in it. Because Malcolm McDowell will literally be in any movie that pays his minimum fee. Like, he has a minimum fee. I don't know what his fee is. I have no idea what his fee is. It might be $1 million a day. I don't know. I haven't a clue. Not a clue. But I know that if you are willing to pay Malcolm McDowell's fee, he'll be in anything. So if you are like making movies on your iPhone and you're like, how can I get like an actor who's worked with like Stanley Kubrick and many other famous directors, You can hire Malcolm McDowell. All you need to do is have some money, because he will turn up if you give him some money. Whereas other actors are a sign of like quality, because they'll turn up for their fee if the movie's good, because they're doing it for the love of the movies. And Tony Todd is one of those guys. Tony Todd, again, icon. Candyman. Candyman. He was in Wishmaster. Like every big horror actor that's ever been was in Wishmaster. Like all the, up until that point, all the iconic horror actors were in Wishmaster. And of course, Tony Todd was in it. Tony Todd was in Star Trek The Next Generation as like Worf's brother. He was in Star Trek Deep Space Nine as older Jake Sisko. He was in Star Trek The Orville. Let's face it, The Orville is new Star Trek and it's way better than Discovery. You know, like Tony Todd is sci-fi and horror, just legend, the Final Destination movies. Oh my God, I love Tony Todd. I really, really love Tony Todd. He's so cool and handsome and scary. And I always thought he was much older than he actually is, because I was used to him being like old Jake Sisko in Deep Space Nine. Oh dear. Because I'm a huge Deep Space Nine fan. Anyway, Tony Todd's in this movie, very briefly, but like, you know, the movie's good. It's scary, it's exciting, it's interesting. It's got a few twists and turns. It's got some things that it threw out there that like I wasn't really expecting, so that's always a mark of interest. Most of all, most importantly, I gave a crap about the characters. If you don't give a crap about the characters, then why are you even watching the movie if you don't care what happens to them? And I cared in Hellfest. So if you're looking for something, you're flicking through Netflix, you're like, what can I watch? I'm bored, what can I watch? Watch Hellfest if you've not seen it. Hellfest, actually, I've watched it 3 times so far since I first watched it. I don't know if that's a sign that's good or not, but I enjoyed it, so yeah. Another one I picked up very cheap. Moving on. This is a movie I wanted to watch again, because I kind of wanted to like it again, but I didn't like it because it's not very good. It's a movie that I really love the concept of. It was just incredibly poorly executed. Again, it was boring. Apollo 18. The idea of this movie is there was an Apollo mission that was classified that we didn't know about. Apollo 18 went to the moon, they had a moon landing, and they never came back. And we don't know what happened to it. But this is like found footage of the astronauts on the moon, and the idea that like there was something up there, and like that in itself is a really interesting concept. The idea of a secret moon landing that nobody knew about. Like this found footage that like has just been discovered and someone's trying to get the truth out there. But it was really boring. It was really, really boring because, well, for many reasons. One of them being that the monster in the movie was a rock. A scary rock. A rock that turned into a spider-ish. Like a alien rock spider thing. It wasn't very good. It wasn't very interesting. The actors weren't very interesting. Sorry. Like, if you were in it, I'm sorry. It just wasn't very good. I feel bad, but yeah, it wasn't very good. It wasn't very interesting, and it was hard to really care anything about the characters because you don't really know anything about them. They're just present in the movie. So, but I only paid $1.99 for it on iTunes, so it wasn't like a massive, massive loss. Moving on, final one for tonight. A recommendation, like to finish on a high note. I don't know actually how you may take this when I say that this is the only Rob Zombie movie I have ever liked. So sorry to Rob Zombie if you ever watched this. I like your music. There was a fly. I like your music. Dragula was like, you know, my jam back in day. But yeah, not a great fan of Rob Zombie's movies. But this one was really good. And it's called 31. And I am going to contradict myself a little bit here. Malcolm McDowell's in it. Briefly, Malcolm McDowell's in it, but he's actually very good. This is actually a good movie with Malcolm McDowell in it and made by Rob Zombie, which two things I would never think would be good. Malcolm McDowell's been in good movies. What I'm saying is that he's often in bad ones. But you know, like Malcolm McDowell's in Tank Girl, and that's like one of the best movies of the 90s, completely. And anyway, excuse me. 31 is really, really a lot of fun to watch. And Rob Zombie's wife is like the lead actress in it. So she's like an older lady. So it's not like a 20-something or a teenager. It's like an older lady. She's got some experience. She's had like time to hone her acting craft. And she's a complete badass in the movie. And it's got one of the best endings to, it's a survival horror movie, and it's like one of the best endings to one of those kind of movies I've ever seen. It was so surprising and good to watch this. I picked this up last year at Halloween, and because every year I go through like my horror list and I'm like, oh, I forgot about this movie. I should watch this again, and I watched it again and I still enjoyed it. So it's like a group of older people. So like if you're not into watching the teen type slasher movies, if you're an older person, like a sort of person who might be in their 40s or 50s and wants to see people their own age in the movie. I'm not in my 40s, by the way, just saying. It's just like an older group. And it's like they are captured and put in a scary place and have to fight off some evil people. Without getting into too much spoilery territory, it's really good. And all the way through the movie, I was like, but this is good. But Rob Zombie made this movie, and I normally hate his movies. No offense, I like your music. Like, how can I like this movie when I normally don't like his movies? And the explanation was it was just a good movie. I really enjoyed it. I highly recommend it. And you can pick it up for next to nothing because hardly anyone knows about it for some reason. But yeah, his wife, I can't remember her name and I feel terrible like saying Rob Zombie's wife. But yeah, she's like one incredible actress in this movie. And if there was like a horror movie Oscars, she totally would have gotten a nomination for this movie because it was great. Like she gave like a stellar performance in this movie. Okay, so that's today's set of reviews. I will be doing more of these because there's plenty more time before Halloween. And I'm still poorly, so I'm probably going to be watching plenty more movies because I bought a load on iTunes. Recommendations. Cabin Fever, the original. Okay, the original Cabin Fever. Hellfest, 31. Skipping Cabin Fever, the remake. Do not watch it. It is boring. Terror of All Hallows Eve is so boring. Don't watch it. It's so boring. And Apollo 18, again, boring. I'm not going to go into too much detail on it, but also today we watched The Pyramid on Netflix, which has Dennis O'Hare from American Horror Story in it, who was very good. And this is about a spooky pyramid in Egypt that's full of spooky things, and like skeleton cats and Anubis. It's sort of one of those, it was not good, but it was entertaining. Like, it held my interest throughout the movie. It wasn't good. I need to stress, it wasn't good. Like, it was not a good movie. But I enjoyed Dennis O'Hare, and I enjoyed, like, some of the killings in it. Like, and it was, at least it was a bit original. Like, it wasn't something that I'd seen a million times before. Like, definitely never seen the Egyptian god Anubis in a horror movie before. So, you know, there was that, but I didn't want to give it a full review because, you know, because it's sort of halfway in between. It's not good, but like, yeah. Okay, right, I'm going to leave it there for this evening. Thank you very much for tuning in and watching this review. Please remember to like and subscribe, and hopefully I will see you again next time, and by then I'll be used to my fringe, and I won't be, like, doing this all the way through, and, like, it's just a shade too long. It's just a shade. Look, right? It's in my eyes. It's in my eyes. It needs to be very slightly, like, I need to just take some scissors and, like, go flippity floopity floop. But then I've got the feeling that if I do that, I'll end up on, like, a Brad Mondo, like, a hairdresser reacts video, and nobody needs that. Nobody needs that, especially not me. Okay, all right. So hopefully